surmise are premature. The compact car is not dead yet.
Not everyone wants to drive an SUV, and there are advantages to driving a compact car. They tend to be more affordable, they're better on gas, and they also just tend to ride better. So we've collected some of them, and by some of them, I actually mean all of them.
Yeah, we have 8 cars from 3 countries, all taking different approaches on making a compact car. So we're gonna drive them all and see which one is the best.
It's one of the truths of any of these mega comparisons that one car has to finish last, and today it's the Nissan Sentra. Now I know this sounds like a cop-out, but trust me when I say that it's not that this is a bad car. In fact, I'd still recommend it to people who are shopping for a good value. It's just that the Sentra's getting on a bit, and it lacks the refinement and tech of some of its newer competitors. Now this is the only car in this entire group that serves as the basis for a one-make race series here in North America. So that means it definitely has the most powerful, rowdiest engine, right? Well, no, actually the Sentra follows more or less the same recipe that it has for decades. A 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder putting out just slightly less than 150 horsepower. Now in Canada, you can still get it with a 6-speed manual because Sentra Cup, but in the US, it is a CVT only, and that's what we have here. It's a pretty agreeable little transmission. It doesn't get unduly noisy when I floor it to pick up some speed, and, well, it just behaves itself. It's also not the slowest car here. In our real-world on-ramp acceleration test, it beat the Corolla hybrid. The Sentra has one of the best official fuel economy figures for the pure gas competitors in this comparison too, just losing out to the Jetta. Now being long, low, and wide, the Sentra performs pretty respectably in the handling and ride department. Now it ties the Mazda for having the narrowest tires in this test, but the way that the Sentra grips and just feels eager through these twistier bits of the route, you'd never know it. There is more steering weight here than in any of the other cars, but hey, if you're looking for that old school feeling, then that's a positive, not a negative. It might be the oldest design here, but the Sentra nails the fundamentals. It has a low nose, a graceful cabin shape, and just classic proportions. The blue paint looks great, and the black roof plus black wheels give it just a little bit of an edge. It's in the cabin where the Nissan starts to fall behind. It's just really plasticky in here, not just to look at, but even weirdly to smell. And there's just no real sense of style. Nissan bundles a lot of safety kit into the Sentra as standard. This includes the usual smattering of adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, and lane keep assist, though there is no rear cross traffic alert. We do really like the blind spot monitoring built into the interior of the car, not the mirrors. It just makes it easier to see in bad weather. Nissan's lane keep is particularly aggressive though, enough to encourage at least one judge to just turn it off. The Sentra is a great example that not all tech is created equal too. While it's one of the few with a 360-degree camera, it has all the resolution of an old Game Boy, so it's not that much more useful. Nissan's 8-inch touchscreen isn't much to look at. It's not particularly quick, but it does the job, which is basically what I can say about the Bose audio system too. It's fine. Now this is a system that still requires you to tether your phone with a cord. You have the choice of USB-A or USB-C. There's also a screen in between the dials that is pretty useful. It has a fair amount of information, including a handy one that tells you just how much fuel you've saved using the start-stop. The Sentra's big advantage is affordability. The top-rung SR ends where many competitors are only just getting into their mid-level trims. This SR Premium Tester is the only model here to slide in under $30,000 in America, including destination. It is very nearly the price champ in Canada too. It's $33,793 price tag, only beat by the Hyundai Elantra. We all agree, while the Sentra does bring up the back of the pack in this comparison, it's still a package that each of us would recommend to people based on the good driving manners and its value. It's the cabin design and the tech that really holds the Sentra back, but as the oldest car in this comparison, we think a refresh is all it needs to be back in the fight.
We'll get you back to our compact car shootout in a second, but first let's take a moment to talk about protecting your vehicle. Custom made for an exact fit, WeatherTech offers complete protection for your vehicle's interior, especially family cars like these. There's the original WeatherTech floor liner and the new floor liner HP made from a more flexible material. Both work with your OE floor mat clips and protect up the sides of your footwell, plus the floor liner HP comes with these spikes for even better grip. And let's not forget the cargo liner for trunks and hatchbacks, which is great to protect your vehicle from everything you might need to carry in your brand new car. All WeatherTech products come with a lifetime guarantee. You can order online at weathertech.ca. Shipping is free anywhere in Canada, or for those who are local, they can visit our retail showroom at 1164 Walker's Line in Burlington and get their order same day. If it snowed this weekend at times I thought it might, the Impreza might have won the whole comparison, but it didn't, so let's take a deeper look as to why the Subaru only mustered a 7th place finish. The Impreza is the oddball of the bunch, which shouldn't really come as a surprise. It is a Subaru after all. You know, the brand that marches to the beat of their own drum, which can be as much of an advantage as a disadvantage at times. Being the only hatchback, this is the shortest car here, just over 176 inches long. It also has the largest cargo area in terms of cubic feet, which is just over 20. But because of its short size, the cargo area is also short. A lot of that cubic feet is vertical, so this exceeds it carrying tall things like plants maybe, but when it comes to carrying longer depth items, this is actually the worst car out of the group. With the exterior, well, this looks like a Subaru. It's unmistakable. The Impreza hasn't really changed its overall look in, well, a better part of a decade, so you'll know what this is driving down the road with its C-shaped headlights and taillights. And I like how our tester has the accessory mud flaps, gives into its sort of rally car looks, and although not everyone agrees on this looking like a decent vehicle, some of us do like it. It's definitely not one of the best looking vehicles, but it's not overly offensive either. Power for the Impreza comes from a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, and this is one of the few cars in the comparison that doesn't have any sort of turbocharger or hybrid assist. It makes 182 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty much mid-pack in our comparo. Power is sent to all 4 wheels, of course, because it is a Subaru, using a continuously variable automatic transmission. In normal driving mode, the CVT is a little delayed in expanding enough to get the engine into its optimal power band. Once there, it does accelerate with decent authority, but this is also one of the louder vehicles in terms of the drivetrain, something the Subaru Impreza has always kind of suffered with. I will say this is one of the most fluid drivetrains in terms of power delivery. I don't mean it's smooth, it is a little buzzy and I can't feel vibrations, but power is very linear throughout, unlike the Jetta and the K4 that are very peaky. Now that said, fuel economy is not that great. In fact, on the highway, it only gets 33 miles per gallon or 7.2 liters per 100 kilometers, and that's easily dead last in this comparison. A trade-off, I guess, of having all-wheel drive, but it's more than just that. The Impreza is pretty responsive and it holds its own in corners with the lower center of gravity from the boxer engine and symmetrical all-wheel drive. That's always been a plus. The steering, though, feels very light and overly boosted compared to many of the cars. In fact, one reviewer said it kind of feels like this is an SUV crossover compared to the rest of the sedans, and I don't think that's too far off. But on the flip side, the Impreza definitely offers one of, if not the best ride comforts. It just swallows up bumps and broken pavement with ease, and compared to some of the stiffer riding cars, it's in a whole different sort of class and category. Like so many other aspects of this car, the infotainment system also got mixed reviews. Some of us appreciate the physical buttons that line the side, while others find them to be out of date and hard to look at. And same goes for the software itself. I like the simple, easy to use layout. Others think it looks dated. But the thing I really like about this infotainment system is how it separates information. So the largest middle portion of the tablet-like screen has my main info of whatever I'm doing, or it'll play CarPlay or Android Auto. At the top, I can customize what always remains there. So I can have my audio info on the top, my Waze in the middle, and at the bottom, there's still the shortcut, touch buttons, and other information. Perhaps the biggest issue for the Impreza isn't any of the other 7 competitors in this test. It's actually across the showroom floor in the shape of the Crosstrek. All the sedans we're testing against the Impreza have something to offer that their SUV or crossover siblings don't. But the Crosstrek is essentially an Impreza just raised up a bit, and despite the higher center of gravity, there isn't much difference in the way the vehicles drive. So yeah, it's sort of those compromises and lack of identity that holds the Impreza back. I mean, if you really do like the Impreza in this comparison, like I said, maybe go look at the Crosstrek. You might like it even better.
All right, viewers, I have a favor to ask. Can you just close your eyes for a sec? Do you remember what the Kia Forte looks like? Yeah, me neither. And that's okay, because the K4 that replaces it is obviously a much more dramatic looking car. Now it arrives in the compact class with a whole bunch of tech, and in this GT line trim promises to be the sportier choice. Or at least it wants to be. Boy, oh boy, is there a lot to talk about with the Kia K4 styling. Now, the brand has definitely found its own design language in the last few years, and whether you like it or not, that's the point. You're thinking about it. Now, all of us like certain aspects of the design. Mike can't stop talking about those dramatically flared rear wheel arches, and I like the amber light signature that emphasizes how wide this car is, especially at night. But boy, oh boy, that back end. There are a lot of conflicting lines, especially around the rear quarter window, and it just sort of makes it look like the rest of the K4 is still loading. The K4 uses the familiar 1.6-liter turbo 4-cylinder that is in so many Hyundai and Kia products these days. Its 195 horsepower and 190 pound-feet ratings are also very familiar at this point. Same goes for the 8-speed automatic, tasked with sending the power to the front wheels. As the most powerful non-hybrid here, the K4 feels it. Those looking for a little more scrappy nature will appreciate all the turbo power because it will actually induce a little bit of torque steer at lower speeds, and there's a pretty muscular exhaust note too. Now, we've dinged this transmission before for being a little slow-witted, but Kia has seemingly tweaked it because it's pretty responsive, kicking down when you request full power. In the highway acceleration test, in fact, this is the quickest car here, handily beating the Civic despite carrying around an extra turkey's worth of weight. You'll pay for that power at the pumps, though maybe not as much as you might think. Our real-world loop put the Kia ahead of its official 29 miles per gallon, or 8.1 liters per 100 kilometer rating, sneaking ahead of the thirstier Mazda and Subaru with 31 miles per gallon, or 7.6 liters per 100 kilometers. The Kia has comfortable front seats, but like the Corolla, it doesn't have a whole lot of headroom. That's sort of the case out back too, although at least people back there can enjoy some of the most spacious legroom in the class. Like the exterior, the K4 interior takes big stylistic swings. Now, what we do like in here is the varied use of textures and colors, not to mention big physical buttons front and center. What's really impressive, especially considering the Elantra, is that if you didn't know that they were related, there's no way to tell. The white accents add some lightness, and while the pattern on the dashboard looks like someone's cat fell asleep on the backslash button, it works far better than that sounds. I personally dig the commitment to the angular bit, too. The switchgear all having hard angles, or the three-dimensional nature of the steering wheel, is just proof that Kia is having a little bit of fun with its interior designs. I also like that, as maybe a response to so many journalists complaining about piano black, Kia has now introduced piano gray. Oh, Kia. Just when I thought you were getting rid of that frustrating swappable touch panel, you've introduced something for your climate controls that might be worse. I don't know, is this a psyop to make me miss the touch panel? Because it might be working. So if you want to go into detail for your climate controls, they're on a little portion of a touchscreen that is in between your info screen and your driver instrument cluster. The problem there is that it's right in between those. So the steering wheel blocks most of it most of the time. If you want to use it, you're going to have to peer over to do so. The rest of the K4's tech package is much better. The latest infotainment is another style over substance one, but the displays are sharp, quick responding, and never require a whole lot of menu digging. The wireless charge pad is not only effective, but we like the swappable nature of the USB ports too. The Kia is one of the few cars here that has a 360-degree camera, and it is very effective. In either country, the K4 is the third most expensive model in this octet. It's $31,465 in America, just slotting in below the pricey Subaru. In Canada, at $36,345, it undercuts the Corolla. In both cases, the K4 still is solid value based on the amount of content Kia packs in. The old Forte, may it rest in peace, always felt like it was just trying to copy the established players in this segment. That definitely isn't the case with the K4. It comes loaded with tech, and it is a dramatic choice, which should appeal to younger, cost-conscious buyers in this segment. I just wish the GT line would pick a lane. Either really lean into the sporty stuff, or embrace this tech suite and become more of a laid-back cruiser. Right now, it just feels a little confused, and its placement in this comparison reflects that.
I've always been a big fan of the Volkswagen Jetta, but its finish here shows just how tight the competition is. So let me explain the two main reasons that kept it from the podium. Called the Highline in Canada, the SEL is the highest trim of Volkswagen's compact car. Although at 186.5 inches in length, this isn't exactly compact. In fact, it is the longest car in this comparison, yet it weighs just over 3,000 pounds, which makes it the lightest car. That big small theme continues under the hood, as the Jetta has the smallest engine in the comparison at 1.5 liters, but the four-cylinder does have a turbocharger, and it makes 158 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque. But those numbers don't really tell the entire story, as like so many German cars, the engine feels very underrated in terms of quoted power. It feels much more powerful than 158 horsepower, and under full throttle, it keeps up with just about anything in this comparison. There is a problem with the drivetrain though, and that is the 8-speed automatic. It is very slow and delayed to shift. It almost doesn't want to downshift even when the driver calls for it, probably to help its fuel economy, which is rated at 40 miles per gallon on the highway. That's only 1 mile per gallon less than the Corolla hybrid. But back to the transmission. So if you're just cruising along like I am and you ask for more power, you hit the accelerator and there's like a 1 second delay before the transmission will actually downshift and give you all the power you want. Here, let me demonstrate. So I'm cruising and I'm gonna push the accelerator now, and there's the power. Volkswagen's Jetta included have always been above average in terms of handling, and this car is no exception. It ranked third in our test in terms of handling and car control, only falling behind the Honda Civic and the Mazda 3. In terms of ride comfort, it falls more mid-pack, as it isn't the best at absorbing bumps, but you don't hear it crash over them, and the rebound is well controlled, giving it sort of a premium, sophisticated feel that matches its handling prowess. And when it comes to wind and road noise, well, the Jetta scored very near the top in both of those categories as well. Being fairly square in shape, the Jetta should offer one of the most accommodating rear seat areas, and in terms of legroom it does, but headroom is just over 37 inches, and there isn't as much cranium capacity as you might expect. It trails actually quite a few cars in that sense. In terms of trunk capacity, it's actually quite the opposite. At 14.1 cubic feet, this isn't anywhere near the largest trunk in the comparison, but it's very square in shape, and its trunk lid is a massive rectangle that allows much larger objects to be inserted than some of the other vehicles with larger trunks. The Jetta's interior is the usual conservative classy we expect from the brand. There's nice elements here and there, and although there are some high-end materials, there's also some low-end materials. But the brand's done a good job in designing them all together to make a overall pleasing package. Less pleasing though is the driver's seat. It's flat and unsupportive and just not that comfortable, and some drivers, myself included, felt it wouldn't go low enough for our liking in terms of vision out of the windshield. The infotainment system is sort of a mix of two worlds. It's very dated looking in terms of having knobs and buttons, but the actual software and graphics are very modern, and With the various buttons and knobs and just a very intuitive layout, this is one of the best and easiest infotainment systems to use in this comparison test. On the downside, the climate controls, although separate, are all touch buttons, and it has these slide controls for the fan and the temperature. If there was just a couple buttons and dials down here, this would have the best user interface in the test. As tested, pricing is just over $30,000 including destination charges, which makes it one of the most affordable. With better transmission gearing and a more comfortable front seat, this would easily be challenging for one of the podium positions.
It is the car you see absolutely everywhere without even realizing. The Toyota Corolla is the best-selling nameplate in the world and a juggernaut of this category, so of course we had to include one. Now, in typical Toyota fashion, this is a hybrid, but it offers something else that's a relative rarity in this class: all-wheel drive. Now, before I talk about that unique powertrain, I'm just going to take a second to talk about the looks of the Corolla because it can be hard to separate the design out from the ubiquity of it. Now, dull gray paint aside, it's actually pretty dramatic. You've got that gaping front grille, the spindly wheels, and a squat stance that has just a hint of touring car about it. The Corolla is one of just 2 vehicles here with all-wheel drive, and only one of the other ones even offers it. Not all systems are created equal, however. Unlike the Subaru, there is no physical connection here between the front and rear axles. Instead, the Corolla uses a separate 30 kilowatt rear motor that only really wakes up at low speeds or when the system detects slip up front. Unlike other Toyotas with a similar setup, the Corolla has no more quoted system horsepower by checking that all-wheel drive box. It's the lowest of the group at just 138 horsepower. So yes, the Corolla is the slowest in our real-world acceleration test. It will get up to highway speeds, but boy, that 1.8 liter does make a whole lot of noise doing it. To its credit though, the eCVT is pretty smooth and very responsive. Now the bad news is that you're not going to get incredible fuel economy to make up for that tardy performance. It is better than all the pure gas cars, but the Corolla does score worse than both the Civic and Elantra in terms of real world and official figures. But the city rating is admittedly excellent. It's 47 miles per gallon or an even 5 liters per 100 kilometers. With a smooth ride and easy, predictable steering, the Corolla Hybrid feels tailor-made for gobbling up enormous amounts of miles. The brakes are also good too. They feel plenty powerful, and if drivers want, they can shift into B, which just kicks up the regenerative braking a little bit. Seat comfort is typical Toyota. Good, but not great. Headroom is also only okay, another Toyota trademark. We did ding the Corolla pretty badly for rear seat comfort though, because it just doesn't have a lot of space. In fact, we scored it dead last. None of us gave the Toyota very good marks for its interior either. We scored that last too, actually. It's just one big slab of soft touch plastic, and it has one of the most pared back center consoles in this comparison. I just really have to pick a bone with Toyota about its wireless charger placement. Not only is it almost too small for modern phones, it's tucked away where that's good because it's out of my line of vision. It's bad because I never know that it's no longer actually charging, which is every couple seconds. Also, the seat heating functions are up there too, and there is a USB port tucked in where you're going to have to crane your neck down to even see it. Just weird decisions inside the Corolla cabin. Toyota has dropped in a 10.5-inch touchscreen in the higher Corolla trims for 2025, and it's a bit of a mixed bag. It doesn't actually seem to be running the latest version of Toyota Audio Multimedia because it doesn't have the permanent menu on the left for native functions when you're running the wireless Apple CarPlay. What's more problematic though is that it no longer has a volume dial. It's like Toyota learned nothing from Honda from a few years ago. It has buttons instead below the screen, and that's a problem because Toyota's volume range treats the first 20 basically like practice numbers, and so you're going to be just tapping constantly to adjust the volume. No complaints from us when it comes to safety though, where the Corolla comes as standard with a pretty diverse range of safety assists and good crash ratings. Comparative pricing depends on the market for the Corolla. There's a bit of a complication. This XSE all-wheel drive hybrid we have here is a Canadian trim, and there isn't an equivalent in America. It's not far off though. In Canada, this model lists for $38,115, putting it nearly $2,000 above the next most affordable model and only $1,000 shy of the Civic, which is the most expensive in both markets. The Toyota Corolla has a reputation that can only be earned after you've sold 50 million of the things globally. Sure, it's not the most exciting choice here, nor the quickest or most fuel efficient or spacious, or you get the picture. But the ease of use and the low expected cost of ownership is what keeps making this such a popular choice in the segment. However, in this scored comparison, that's not enough to get the Corolla higher than 4th place.
Full disclosure, we didn't expect the Mazda 3 to do quite this well. We thought it'd be more mid-pack. It is one of the smallest and it is one of the oldest cars here, but after driving it again, we remembered just how good it is, and it finishes 3rd in our comparison. So I'm in a Canadian Mazda 3 GT, and in the US, there's no direct identical version of this vehicle. It's sort of a mix of 3 trims. So what exactly is a 2.5 GT? Well, it basically is the naturally aspirated version of the Mazda 3 with all the toys. So being naturally aspirated, that means this has the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder that makes 191 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. Although those numbers are on the higher side in this comparison, in real-world testing and acceleration, the Mazda 3 was mid-pack at best, and a lot of that has to do with the 6-speed automatic transmission. It's a little delayed in wanting to downshift and send all the power to the front wheels, and even when it's under full acceleration, it doesn't feel like there's a full 191 there. Maybe it's just because it's naturally aspirated and we're used to that extra little punch from electric motors or turbochargers. Regardless where or how you drive this vehicle, this is one of the most sophisticated drivetrains on hand. The engine revs smoothly and quickly. It's fairly quiet. It just feels premium behind the wheel. Less impressive is the 3's fuel economy, officially rated at 27 miles per gallon city and 37 miles per gallon highway for this front-wheel drive model. It still is near the back end of the comparison when it comes to how much gas it sucks back while driving. Mazda has a reputation for building fun-to-drive cars, and this current 3 is no exception. It actually tied the Civic in terms of driver engagement, and nothing really touched it in terms of the crispness and quickness in how the wheels respond to steering inputs. It's just ready and eager to change directions at a moment's notice. The usual trade-off in having such a responsive chassis is not that great ride comfort, and the Mazda 3 did score lowest in ride comfort amongst all the vehicles, but it's not punishing or overly harsh. It's just the other vehicles are really good when it comes to swallowing up bumps. Although the Mazda 3 is one of the oldest cars on hand, it's still one of the best looking, if not the best looking. Mazda really nailed the overall design and shape of the vehicle from the start, and after all these years, it hasn't really aged. The flowing body lines, the protruding grille, those cool trick turn signals, it all adds up to a vehicle that's instantly identifiable and is very easy on the eyes. On paper, the Mazda 3 is one of the smallest vehicles here, but looks can be deceiving. There's more space inside than maybe the specs suggest. The engineers at the brand have done their best to maximize what they have to work with. For example, in the rear seat, headroom and legroom are rated at some of the lowest numbers in terms of inches, but when we actually sat back there, 2 adults fit quite comfortably, and we preferred the rear seat of this car over some others. Continuing the theme of comfort, the front seat for the driver was rated one of the best in the test. It's highly adjustable, so all of our body types could fit, and it's got ample headroom. The infotainment system drew mixed reviews, as some people still do not like the rotary dial system, although I must say it's growing on me, especially considering we live in a world of touchscreen only everything in so many vehicles. It's refreshing to have all of these buttons, knobs, and dials to operate the system with. Now, as mentioned previously, the 3 is one of the best equipped cars on hand here. It has things like a 360-degree camera, which not all of its competitors feature, and it has head-up display, an exclusive among all the cars we're currently testing. With a lack of an American equivalent trim, it's kind of hard to set the pricing of the Mazda 3, but we would wager it'd be around the $31,000 mark with destination charges included, which makes it a pretty compelling option as it's one of the most fun, comfortable, grown-up, refined offerings in this comparison, which is why it snagged the first podium position. The top 2 finishers are both hybrids and they both have an H on the front. Coming second is the Hyundai Elantra, which is more than the sum of its parts, or more specifically, more than its specifications. The Elantra hybrid we have here is a little bit different, as this is the Canadian HEV Luxe. It doesn't feature all of the same equipment that the American hybrid luxury does. That said, the Luxe or luxury does come stuffed full of other amenities like heated front seats, heated rear seats, a heated steering wheel, a fully digital driver information center, 360 camera, all those good things. In fact, this is one of the best equipped vehicles in our comparison. But there is a miss, and it is a huge miss. This Elantra still does not have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. None of us are huge fans of the current exterior design language on the Elantra. We don't dislike it, we just don't like it either. It's just kind of there and really blends into the landscape of vehicles, as edgy as it may seem up close. Powering the Elantra hybrid is a 1.6-liter 4-cylinder paired to a hybrid system. Total output is listed at 139 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. Now, the horsepower may sound low, but much like the Corolla, numbers can be deceiving. This vehicle easily keeps up with pretty much anything in this comparison except for the Kia K4 and maybe the Civic. A unique feature on the Elantra hybrid is its transmission. It is a 6-speed dual-clutch automatic. And you know what? This is the best application of such a transmission in a mainstream car, because the extra instant torque provided by the electric motor masks that initial jerkiness that DCTs are famous for. So now we've smoothed out all the jerkiness, yet we get the rapid, quick gear changes, which leads to probably the best overall drivetrain that isn't a CVT in terms of smoothness. Another stat that the Elantra hybrid can brag about is fuel economy. Although it is 1 mile per gallon behind the Civic hybrid in the city, it's rated at 5 miles per gallon more on the highway. This is one of the poorest handling vehicles here. It really likes to go straight when hustled through a corner, and although you can fling it around, it doesn't overly like it. The trade-off for that is it has a fantastic ride quality. The comfort theme continues inside, with the front seat being one of the best to pampered drivers. It's one of those combinations of a nice, squishy, comfortable seat that's still pretty supportive, and the driving position's not bad at all. I wouldn't mind if it would go just a little bit lower, but I can't overly complain. The rear seat, though, not as good. Again, it's one of those cars on paper it seems to offer the right amount of legroom and headroom, but in real-world testing when we got back there, we had all the legroom we could ever want, but headroom is lacking. Another place the Elantra hybrid shines is inside with this interior. Although I'm not a fan of all the materials like this, I do applaud Hyundai for trying different things and making it interesting, and all the different textures and colors and contrasts really work. And this was the highest rated interior in terms of design, and I like this sort of long center bar here. It's just interesting without being tacky or over the top. Kudos to Hyundai there. And another thing I really like on the interior is the way the screens are laid out. I have a fully digital dash that blends into my infotainment system, and the wide rectangle screen has the ability to be split screen, which I've always appreciated from Hyundais and Kia. So I can have my Apple CarPlay map mostly dominating the screen, but then in the corner I can still have all my radio information. I wish more infotainment systems allowed users to divvy up the screen in different ways, like the Hyundai does and like the Subaru does.
The Honda Civic and in fact the Kia K4 are the two cars that really set all of this in motion for this mega comparison. The Civic got a hybrid powertrain for 2025, and when we drove it a few months back against the Toyota Prius, we crowned the Honda the winner even though it was a lot less expensive. So we thought to ourselves, well, what if the Honda is the most expensive and we put it against its entire competitive set? Can it still win? Turns out the answer is yeah. Yeah, it can. This generation of Civic has been around for a few years now, and it's a shape that's pretty familiar. Now for 25, Honda did change it, but it's a pretty modest facelift. There's some new body color trim around the headlights, a lower air intake that's a bit fussier and protrudes a little more. It actually looks a little bit BMW, but beyond that, same familiar shape. When it launched, we thought it was pretty conservative, but the trade-off there is that it's also aging pretty well. The Civic is also the most powerful car here. Now, the hybrid powertrain has 200 horsepower and 232 pound-feet of torque. That is more than a Civic Si. It does mean that the manual is dead in the hatchback. That's okay. This uses, well, for simplicity's sake, let's just call it Honda's eCVT transmission. Now, as the most powerful car here, this isn't quite the quickest, but boy is it close. It's a hybrid in the most natural way, in the sense that it's just augmenting a pretty natural power delivery anyway. Honda also includes paddle shifters, except they're not for shifting, therefore adjusting the level of regenerative braking. They're all pretty light, but it's nice to be able to have that control. Officially, the Civic is rated at 50 miles per gallon in the city and 47 miles per gallon on the highway. Now those numbers translate to 4.7 or 5.1 liters per 100 kilometers in Canada. So it's right at the top of the class. In the real world driving loop, though, the Civic tied the Elantra for the best rating here, which was actually a little bit better than its city rating. All of us keep saying that the Civic just feels like it's from a class above, not just in terms of size, because boy, does Honda manage to carve out every available millimeter inside this cabin. No, it's just that it's such a smooth riding car. The damping is fantastic. It is better than some luxury cars that I've driven recently. The Civic kind of makes a mockery of this idea that you need to be either comfortable or sporty too, at least at this part of the market. It just does both. Yes, the SI is sportier, or the Type R is just a straight-on track weapon. But this sport touring sedan handles itself pretty well, and it's maybe one of the most fun cars to drive on the twisty portions of our drive route. In terms of comfort, the Civic has some of the best seats in this segment. They are low, but they're well sculpted, so they're supportive. That low placement may actually be a drawback for you if you're having a bit more trouble getting in and out of vehicles. I could see why something taller like the Jetta would actually be the better choice there. The Civic also has one of the more spacious rear seats in this comparison too. It's not quite as spacious as the weirdly surprising Mazda 3, but it's close. We can happily fit 4 adult folks in this vehicle for our runs back and forth for lunch. The Civic's current cabin design ushered in a new era for Honda, and it is one that we still welcome 3 or 4 years on from its reveal. It's almost as classy as the Mazda's interior, but it is overall more spacious. The material qualities are generally pretty good. We like the small amount of piano black, and where it is, you're not often going to be touching anyway, so that's okay. The pattern on the center console hides dirt pretty well and scratches. If there is a weak point in the Civic, and I mean comparatively a weak point, it is the tech suite. This one has the updated infotainment screen. It's 9 inches. It has Google built in, but it doesn't necessarily look the greatest. It's pretty basic in its operation. I like the color-coded aspect of the main menu. It makes it easier to be able to operate at a glance or without really looking at the screen, which is key these days. But yeah, the fiddly little controls on the left side do kind of ding this interior just a little bit. I do really like the Bose sound system in the Civic. It is powerful. It sounds good. I enjoy listening to my music at entirely too loud of volumes in this car. You get things like adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. That's all pretty familiar. You do not get a 360 camera, which seems to be a thing that Honda is weirdly allergic to. And you also don't get niceties like a head-up display or ventilated seats. That being said, at $33,555 in the US, it is about $2,000 more expensive than the next most expensive offering. And, well, it still does offer a level of maturity and sophistication that you're just not going to get elsewhere. In Canada, the price is $39,230, so just a little shy of $40, also the most expensive, even though it's made in Canada. Weird. In case it isn't obvious, I am a big fan of this new Civic Hybrid. Yes, it's pricey, but I don't think that overshadows its capabilities. It is so good in so many ways. But that's all 8 cars driven and dealt with, so how about we head back to headquarters with Mike and sort this all out. It's not the most surprising conclusion here, but the Honda Civic wins this latest mega comparison. It's always felt kind of like a half class above everything else, and the price reflects that, but if you want the best, well, the Civic is it.
But there were some surprises in this comparison. First off, the mid-pack. They were so close to each other, and it was almost a virtual tie there. The Mazda 3 finished higher than we were expecting, and the Kia K4, well, it didn't do as well as we were expecting.
Yeah, so out of all 8, Mike, which one would you take home with your own money except the Civic?
Well, I think I'd take the Mazda 3.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
What about you?
I think I'd actually go with the Elantra. That one really surprised me with just how comfortable and fuel efficient it is.
Civic Light.
Yeah, the Diet Civic.